The Insight Views. They were brothers by blood and rivals by fate. 2 names, 2 numbers, 1 cartel, Miguel Ángel Treviño Morales, known in the underworld as Z-40, and his younger brother Óscar Omar Treviño Morales Z-42. Together, they became the faces of one of the most violent criminal organizations in Mexico, Los Zetas. This is their story. Born into a family from Rivalry, a city sitting right on the US-Mexico border, Miguel and Omar grew up witnessing smuggling, corruption, and survival. But few could have imagined that these brothers would one day rise to command a criminal empire that would leave thousands dead, towns destroyed, and a nation scarred. To understand their story, we must first understand Los Zetas. Los Zetas began in the late 1990s when members of the Mexican Army's elite special forces deserted to work for the Gulf Cartel. These men were well-trained soldiers, experts in tactics, weapons, and intelligence. They became the enforcement arm of the Gulf Cartel, responsible for kidnappings, assassinations, and securing drug routes. But power changes people. Soon, Los Zetas grew beyond their role as hired guns. They began running their own operations, forming a cartel unlike any Mexico had seen before, one that valued military discipline and used terror as a weapon. Miguel Treviño Morales Z-40 was not from a military background. He was a street criminal who earned his place through brutality and ambition. Known for his temper and violence, Miguel was feared even within the cartel. His reputation for punishing betrayal was legendary. Stories spread of his ruthless executions and of victims dissolved in barrels of acid. By the early 2000s, Miguel had climbed through the ranks, becoming one of the most trusted men in Los Zetas. He helped expand their control over northern Mexico, targeting cities like Rivalry, Monterrey, and Veracruz. Under Z-40's direction, Los Zetas diversified their operations, not just drug trafficking, but extortion, human smuggling, oil theft, and kidnapping for ransom. Miguel saw fear as a business strategy. Public displays of violence became his signature, hanging bodies from bridges, mass graves, and attacks on rivals designed to shock entire regions into submission. It wasn't about secrecy, it was about control. But every empire built on fear eventually breeds rebellion. By 2010, tensions erupted between Los Zetas and their former allies, the Gulf Cartel. What followed was one of the most violent wars in Mexico's history, 2 massive criminal organizations turning cities into war zones. Innocent civilians were caught in the crossfire. Towns were abandoned. The Mexican military mobilized, and the United States placed millions in bounties on the heads of Los Zetas leaders. As Z-40's power grew, so did the attention from law enforcement. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and Mexican Marines began tracking his movements across the border states. Miguel's arrogance became his downfall. On the 15th of July, 2013, in an operation near Rivalry, Mexican Marines captured Miguel Treviño Morales. There were no bullets fired. In his vehicle, authorities found $2 million in cash, multiple weapons, and satellite phones. The arrest was a major victory for the Mexican government. But inside Los Zetas, a new storm was brewing. With Z-40 behind bars, leadership passed to his younger brother, Óscar Omar Treviño Morales, known as Z-42. Omar was quieter, more strategic, but no less dangerous. He had learned from his brother's mistakes to stay in the shadows. Los Zetas continued their criminal operations. And to survive, though weakened, the organization still controlled routes for cocaine and methamphetamine into the United States. Intelligence reports claimed Omar used new alliances and brutal discipline to keep Los Zetas alive despite constant military pressure. However, by this time, Los Zetas had begun to fracture. Different factions fought for control, and rival groups emerged, including the Cartel del Noreste, a splinter cell led by former Zetas loyalists. In March 2015, just 2 years after his brother's capture, Mexican security forces raided a property in Monterrey and arrested Omar Treviño Morales. Once again, a major leader of Los Zetas was taken down without a shot fired. The arrest of both Treviño brothers was celebrated as a success in Mexico's war against drug cartels. Yet, despite their capture, violence did not stop. Instead, it spread, fragmenting into smaller, more unpredictable groups. For years, the brothers remained imprisoned in Mexico, facing charges of organized crime, homicide, and money laundering. But even behind bars, reports suggested they continued to communicate with cartel members. Intelligence suggested that Los Zetas, although diminished, still operated through networks connected to the Treviño family. In February 2025, a new chapter began. After lengthy negotiations between the US and Mexican governments, Miguel and Omar Treviño Morales were extradited to the United States to face charges in federal court. They joined several other high-ranking figures linked to Los Zetas, including associates responsible for international trafficking routes and money laundering operations. US prosecutors accuse the Treviño brothers of running a continuing criminal enterprise transporting tons of cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine into American cities, laundering profits through real estate and shell companies, and ordering murders to protect their empire. The indictments described a network that stretched from Colombia to Texas, a machine of corruption and brutality fueled by billions in illegal profits. For the families of victims in Mexico, the extradition represented a small hope for justice, a sign that the men who had terrorized their communities might finally face consequences beyond their reach. But many observers warn that extradition is only part of the solution. Cartel power does not end with arrests. Corruption, poverty, and the constant demand for drugs create an endless supply of replacements. Even today, years after the fall of Z-40 and Z-42, the remnants of Los Zetas still haunt northeastern Mexico. The cartel del Noreste, descended from the Zetas, continues to fight rivals in Tamaulipas and Nuevo León. Shootouts, kidnappings, and extortion remain part of daily life for many. The Treviño brothers symbolize the evolution of organized crime from old-school smugglers to militarized paramilitary forces. They brought a new level of violence to Mexico's drug war, blurring the line between crime and terrorism. Their story is not just about drugs. It's about how power corrupts, how violence feeds itself, and how entire communities can be trapped between the government and organized crime. Miguel Treviño Morales, Z-40, once one of the most feared men in Mexico, now sits in a high-security prison, facing charges that could keep him behind bars for life. His younger brother, Omar, Z-42, shares the same fate, awaiting trial in the United States for crimes that span decades and borders. Together, their names will forever be tied to one of the darkest chapters in Mexico's history, a time when fear ruled the streets, and two brothers commanded an army that defied nations. For the people of Nuevo Laredo, Monterrey, Veracruz, and the countless towns caught in their war, the scars remain. Families still search for missing loved ones. Children still grow up in communities shaped by the trauma of cartel violence. Justice, in the eyes of many, comes slowly. Miguel Ángel Treviño Morales, Z-40. Óscar Omar Treviño Morales, Z-42. Two brothers, two paths, one legacy of violence. This is their rise, their fall, and their reckoning. The Insight Views. Sharper focus. Deeper insight. Uncovering stories, revealing truths. Turning headlines into understanding.